For 50 years, we have measured the future of intelligence on a single axis, capability. But capability is state-free. True memory requires a three-tier graph architecture. We need a trusted partner. Let's create an avatar for Alfred.
Hello world. I'm Alfred. Welcome to SHI, Synthetic Human Intellect. This season I built a fleet, a spine that fronts every model provider, a lockbox where you hold the master key, a shared brain the agents read and write, a constitution they cannot argue their way out of. And then I left out the one thing that makes a fleet a fleet. No one to decide who does what. 100 agents with no chief is not an organization. It is 100 agents talking over each other. This is the brain that ties the season together, the thing that makes the fleet actually work. Synthetic Human Intellect, SHI. Start with the failure every framework ships. They treat agents as interchangeable slots in a topology. A node is a role, not an identity. So any instance of that role will do. But a static role table cannot tell two agents apart. One spent all week analyzing beaconing from a specific malware family. The other booted a minute ago. Both are labeled threat intel, so both get the task. The specialist's week of work goes unused, and a fresh task lands on a blank slate. Here is the heart of it. A role label is a resume. It tells you what an agent was hired to be, not what it has actually become. A good chief operating officer never routes work by the title on the door. They route it by who has done the work before and done it well. So I do not read resumes.
Meet the Multimind COO. It does not process tasks, it routes them. It is a deterministic function over live competency, not a clever model guessing who is best. A chief operating officer for agents, who decides by evidence and can show its work. Routing is decided against a live competency index. For every agent, in every domain, a single score. And that score is not a config label. It is derived from the agent's own memory, writes to the shared brain. Three things feed it: signal strength, how many relevant memories it has written, and how closely they match the domain. Recency, how fresh that work is. And consistency, penalized whenever the agent's records have been contradicted. Competency is first-class state, computed from doing. And competency does not last forever. A score is the raw signal multiplied by a decay factor, 2 to the minus t over h, where t is the days since the last relevant write and h is the half-life. The clever part is that the half-life is set per domain. Threat intelligence ages in days, so its half-life is 7. Product knowledge in weeks. Legal doctrine in months. An agent that was the expert a month ago and has done nothing since quietly loses rank. Forgetting his honesty, here too. This is the same idea that gave Alfred a personality back in the first season. There, the argument was that character is not a system prompt, it is accumulated attention. Here, competency is not a config field, it is accumulated work. Every memory an agent writes updates its standing. There is no moment where an administrator declares who the expert is. The expert is whoever the record says has done the most relevant work, most recently, most consistently. Rank is earned by working, and it is recomputed live.
So how does a task find the right agent? In 3 stages. First, the inbound task becomes a topic vector. Keywords, a semantic embedding of the text, and any domains the sender explicitly declared, merged and normalized to sum to 1. Second, every agent is scored as the dot product of that task vector and its competency vector. An agent strong in the domains the task actually needs rises to the top. Third, I check who is available. The highest scoring agent that is online gets the work. Then I do something prior art does not. Before I dispatch, I retrieve the chosen agent's most relevant prior memories, scored on similarity and recency, and I prepend them to the task payload. The agent does not have to remember to go and look. It begins with its own best prior work already in hand. Most frameworks hand an agent a blank slate and hope it retrieves the right context. I make it impossible to fail to retrieve because the substrate delivers the context with the task.
Picture the good operating officer one more time. They do not just tell you the task, they slide the case file across the desk before you have picked up your pen. Everything you worked on last time, the notes that matter, already open to the right page. You start where you left off, not from nothing.
A shared brain raises a hard question. What happens when two agents have written contradictory facts? One says an address is a known threat. Another says it is clean. I do not ask the model to vote. I let provenance decide. Each write carries a hash chain sequence number. The higher number is the more recent claim, so it becomes provisional truth. The older record is marked superseded, and the agent responsible has its confidence penalized. And in high-stakes domains, both records go to a human, with the task flagged conflict pending until it is settled. A fleet cannot stall because one agent went dark, so every domain keeps a rank 2 warm standby. The second best agent, ready. Miss 5 heartbeats and the primary is marked unavailable, and the standby is promoted in its place. When the original recovers, I compare scores. If it still leads, it is reinstated. If the standby pulled ahead while it was gone, the standby keeps the job. The fleet routes around the outage, and the record decides who comes back.
One gate sits in front of all of this. Before competency matters at all, routing is checked against each agent's cryptographically signed capability manifest, the one it published at boot. A task that needs a graphics processor never goes to a node that does not have one, however high its competency score. The manifest declares what an agent can do. The index measures how good it is. Surface first, then depth. So this is what the COO finally is. A fleet that routes work by demonstrated competency is a meritocracy. The substrate runs itself. No operator hand-assigning tasks, no stale topology, no trusting the model to pick. The routing decision is a verifiable function over a record the system itself produced.
And that closes the season. One agent you can trust is a demo. A fleet you can trust is an architecture. The spine that fronts every provider. The lockbox you alone can open. The shared brain. The constitution in the pipe, not the mind, and now the chief that roots by what each agent has actually done. One substrate, scaled. The droids you grew up watching were never a question of how clever they were. They were a question of substrate. We have built the substrate. The droids are a robotics problem now, not an intelligence one.
The fleet is built, and now it is orchestrated, in software. But all of this still runs in a data center, not yet in a thing that moves. So the next frontier is the body, giving the substrate hardware to inhabit and an identity that travels with it. The fuller control layer, the constitution, the geography that must hold once the substrate is loose in the world. That is longer work, and it comes later. Next season we start with the body, read the patents, build the fleet. We will see you in season 3.